The economic tremors of 2008, when global debt stood at a staggering $173 trillion, now feel like a distant whisper compared to the financial earthquake we face today. Fast forward to today, and that number has ballooned to an eye-watering $313 trillion. This isn't just a distant, abstract figure for economists, it's a colossal ticking time bomb that impacts your money, your job, and the stability of the entire world. What happens when countries, even powerful ones, simply can't pay their bills anymore? We're going to explore the terrifying scenarios that could unfold, and most importantly, whether your pension, your savings, and your financial future are truly at risk. Prepare to look at the global economy in a whole new, unsettling light. At its core, national debt, or sovereign debt, is simply the money a government owes to its creditors. These creditors can be its own citizens, foreign governments, banks, or international organizations. Governments borrow money for various reasons: to fund public services like healthcare and infrastructure, to stimulate the economy during recessions, or to finance wars. Historically, borrowing has been a normal and often necessary part of governing. However, what we've seen over the past few decades, particularly since the 2008 financial crisis and accelerated dramatically by the 2020 pandemic, is an unprecedented surge in global debt levels. Central banks responded to economic downturns by slashing interest rates to near zero, and in some cases, even negative, and by implementing massive quantitative easing programs, essentially printing vast amounts of money to buy government bonds. This made borrowing incredibly cheap, almost free for governments. As a result, many nations, both developed and developing, loaded up on debt, seeing it as a low-cost way to fuel growth and respond to crises. For instance, the United States national debt has soared past $34 trillion. In Europe, countries like Italy and Greece have debt-to-GDP ratios well over 100%, meaning their debt exceeds their annual economic output. Japan, for example, has a debt-to-GDP ratio exceeding 260%, making it one of the most indebted nations relative to its economy, largely due to decades of battling deflation and supporting an aging population. This environment of ultra-low interest rates created a dangerous illusion that debt could grow indefinitely without severe consequences. But as interest rates have begun to rise globally in the last few years, the cost of servicing this colossal debt is becoming a crushing burden, raising serious questions about sustainability and the very real possibility of a sovereign debt crisis. When a nation can no longer pay its debt, it enters a sovereign default. This is not a theoretical exercise. History is littered with examples, from Greece's near collapse in the 2010s to multiple defaults by Argentina. The consequences are brutal and far-reaching. Imagine a domino effect. First, the government can no longer borrow money, freezing its ability to fund essential services. Healthcare systems falter, public employees aren't paid, and social safety nets unravel. Second, the country's currency typically devalues sharply. This makes imports incredibly expensive, leading to rampant inflation as the cost of everyday goods skyrockets. Citizens' purchasing power evaporates and their savings become worthless. Think of Zimbabwe in the 2000s or Venezuela more recently, where hyperinflation rendered local currency practically useless. Third, the banking system can collapse. If banks hold large amounts of government bonds that suddenly become worthless, they become insolvent, triggering a financial panic. People lose access to their deposits, businesses can't get loans, and the entire economy grinds to a halt. Finally, there's the geopolitical fallout. A defaulting nation can destabilize its region, leading to social unrest, mass migrations, and even international conflict as global powers contend for influence or resources in the ensuing chaos. For example, during the Greek debt crisis, the fear was that a default could trigger a broader financial contagion across the Eurozone, threatening the stability of the entire European Union. The interconnectedness of today's global financial markets means a major default, especially by a large economy, could send shockwaves across the entire world, hitting pension funds, mutual funds, and investments far beyond the defaulting nation's borders. It's a scenario that keeps central bankers and finance ministers awake at night, because the scale of today's debt is simply unprecedented. Now, here's where we dive into a controversial perspective that challenges the conventional wisdom about debt being inherently bad. Some economists, particularly proponents of modern monetary theory, argue that countries that borrow in their own currency, like the United States, Japan, or the UK, can never truly default in the traditional sense. Their argument is that these governments can always print more money to pay off their debts. From this viewpoint, debt isn't a problem as long as it doesn't cause excessive inflation. They contend that government spending, even if deficit-financed, can be a powerful tool to achieve full employment and public policy goals, as long as the economy has unused capacity. They might point to Japan's decades of high debt-to-GDP ratios without experiencing hyperinflation as evidence. According to this theory, the real limit on government spending is not the amount of debt, but the actual resources and productive capacity of the economy. However, this view is highly contentious and widely debated by mainstream economists. Critics of MMT argue that while a country can technically print money to avoid default, doing so almost invariably leads to severe inflation and currency devaluation, which is effectively a default by other means. They contend that this printing press approach destroys the value of savings, punishes fixed-income earners, and erodes trust in the currency, ultimately leading to economic instability and poverty for the masses. For instance, countries like Venezuela or Zimbabwe, which printed money to fund spending, demonstrate the disastrous consequences. While they technically avoided outright default on external debt, in some cases their citizens suffered hyperinflation that wiped out their wealth. The debate hinges on a fundamental question: is the ability to print money a get-out-of-jail-free card, or merely a slower, more insidious path to economic ruin? The MMT perspective suggests that the fear of government debt is often overblown, a political tool rather than a genuine economic constraint, but the evidence from real-world hyperinflationary episodes provides a chilling counter-argument. So how does this global debt bomb actually impact your money and your pension? The primary mechanism is through inflation and interest rates. When governments accumulate massive debts, especially if they struggle to find buyers for their bonds, central banks might feel pressured to keep interest rates low or even buy government debt themselves. This increases the money supply, which can fuel inflation. As inflation rises, the purchasing power of your savings, your wages, and your pension erodes. That dollar you saved 5 years ago buys less today. This is a subtle but potent form of wealth transfer, from savers to debtors. Furthermore, if a major nation or multiple nations default, the impact on global financial markets would be catastrophic. Pension funds, which are often heavily invested in government bonds and global equities, would see the value of their holdings plummet. Retirement accounts like 401(k)s and IRAs, which are tied to stock and bond markets, would suffer significant losses. The interconnectedness of the modern financial system means that a crisis in one major economy can quickly spread, causing a contagion effect that impacts investors worldwide. Imagine the 2008 financial crisis, but amplified by the sheer scale of current global debt. It's not just about a specific country's ability to pay, it's about the systemic risk that a chain reaction of defaults or currency crises could trigger. The question isn't just who pays, but who suffers the most. The answer, historically, is often the average citizen through lost savings, job insecurity, and a drastically reduced standard of living. This isn't theoretical fear-mongering. It's a direct consequence of policies that prioritize short-term stability over long-term fiscal health. As we journey through this landscape of colossal global debt, it's clear that we are sailing in largely uncharted waters. The sheer scale of the $313 trillion debt bomb presents both unprecedented risks and profound questions about the future of our economic systems. While the immediate threat of a major nation collapsing is complex and cushioned by global mechanisms, the subtle erosion of wealth through inflation, the potential for market volatility, and the long-term burden on future generations are undeniable. Understanding these forces isn't just for economists. It's essential for every individual trying to protect their financial future in an increasingly interconnected and uncertain world. The debate about how to manage this debt, whether through austerity, growth, inflation, or even radical new economic theories, is one of the most critical conversations of our time. It will shape global geopolitics, define economic opportunity, and directly impact the quality of life for billions. What do you think? Is the global debt crisis an inevitable disaster waiting to happen, or is it a manageable challenge that modern economic tools can overcome? How do you think these massive debt levels will ultimately be resolved? And what steps are you taking to protect your own finances? Share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments below. Your insights fuel our collective understanding. If this deep dive into the hidden realities of global debt has sparked your curiosity and challenged your perspective, don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with others. And for more clear, concise insights into the forces driving global markets, make sure to subscribe to NextGen Econosphere and join our community as we continue to explore the stories behind the numbers and uncover the unexpected together.